Everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
It may well possess a rudimentary intelligence.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Felt a great disturbance in the force.
Hello, I'm Mr. Red.
Come on, bark like a dog for me.
Where's the goodies? Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I bet you wouldn't have done anything like this if Mom and Dad were here.
You filthy criminal.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Here are your hosts, Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all changed since you hung around, but those dreams have remained and they've turned around. Who'd have thought they'd lead ya? Who'd have thought they'd lead ya? Back here where we need ya. Back here where we need ya. Yeah, we tease him a lot, 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back.
There we go. Welcome back to Everything Old is New again. Douglas Viviani with our resident alien, David Cohen.
Resident alien.
We like that.
No, I'm legally here in this country.
But there could be aliens of another type, couldn't there?
Oh, I see.
Could this be the return after 7 months of a discussion of UFOs, a revisit of 2022? David Cohen, where are we here on this?
I think it could be.
That song
we might have a very special guest.
Yes, that song was apropos. We tease him a lot because we got him on the spot. Welcome back, Dr. John Viviani, to Everything Old is New again, our ufologist extraordinaire, our UFO enthusiast galore, our aficionado of all things odd. Dr. Viviani's been away for 7 months. We'll talk about that in this first section here just for a moment, some lessons learned maybe. But Dr. Viviani, welcome back to Everything Old is New again.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back. But then again, the old joke is it's great to be anywhere at this point.
Exactly. Because without getting into the details, I think lots of our listening audience know, because we've talked about it here and there. And you were in the ICU in Huntington Hospital
how long was it? I was deathly ill. I collapsed one day without any symptoms and ended up in the ICU. Long story short, they had to put me in a coma for 3 weeks, was it?
You were in the ICU for 3.5 months, and approximately three of those, a little less than 3 of those months, you were in a self-induced, if they call it, or a medically induced coma, with lots of stuff that they had to do to you and lots of things you had to do to come back. So I want to talk about the coma for a moment because that's an interesting topic, what it's like. But let's explain first. So that's what you were, and then after that you came out of it and were in a hospital bed for approximately a month, a little less than that, and then a nursing home, and then home. Not nursing home, but it is a nursing home, but it was a rehab location. Then, believe it or not, back to the hospital, then home, and now doctor's appointments. So, but you're on the mend. We're happy to see that you're back here and Everything Old is New again. There's been a clamoring, a questioning, and what the hell's going on. But also, besides that, there's been a lot of prayers, a lot of thoughts. The radio community that we have been associated with has reached out in the past, and lots of people, including, Jackson, California, KVGC, right, with Jim Guidi. We spread the word there and everywhere. And so the prayers were there. Now, let me ask you a question. When you're in ICU, now, I was told the goal is for the patient not to heal, but not to remember anything that's happening in ICU because it's rather uncomfortable for the person as you're going through it.
Drugs, so they give you amnesia drugs.
Right. So it's to heal and for amnesia, so to speak. But you do remember some of it. What? I guess if you can answer.
Wait, is that what you're saying? That's what the coma does? It's basically
they give while you're in the coma. They give the drugs. Part of the drugs they give you as an amnesia effect because they really don't want you to recall the horrible experiences that you're going through. Because I'm not going to get into details, but if you remember everything, it's bad.
So let's go through it. There's some things that leak through, some things you do remember. So let's be clear.
But
let me just say, set the scene is because you're in a bed, your eyes are closed, you're unable to move. It's in essence a sleep state. It's in essence, now this is what we're going to ask you about. They told us from the outside looking in that when you visit with someone, they can hear you. We believe that to be the case because when we went in, we learned a lot about the medications, yes, but also the signs and symbols of what's going on around you. We saw the blood pressure increase when we were in and talking and playing music and radio shows and whatever else we were doing. So that leads to the question of if you remember, because they're saying, and there is an effect of people being there. So now I'll be quiet. From yours, after setting it up, from your side, do you remember any of that? And if so, what do you remember about being in a coma?
Yes. Well, what I do remember is I remember music being played. I remember it was kind of like I knew I was in a fog state. I didn't remember where I was, but I could hear part of me, heard like voices because the family would come in, you would come in, and then from my understanding, you would play music that I liked, and I think I smiled. I absolutely responded to the input. The point I want to make to the viewers is if you have a loved one sick and you think that they're not there, that you think they're a vegetable or they're not coming back, there is a part that is there, and I remember it because I could verify certain things that was done, so I'm not making it up. Like, for instance, a nurse came in, and she held my hands and made believe we were dancing, and my blood pressure went, my brain activity and blood pressure went up when we were dancing, so I kind of remember saying, dancing, but yeah, now after the fact, I found out that she would come in and dance with me, make believe dancing, and I've since seen many nurses that were in the ICU that are so happy to see me and told me how much the improvement is. But number one, don't give up on people sick loved ones in the hospital. They are there and they can use your input and love. And number two, prayer is so important. I know you hear it, and I don't care what religion you are, but there was a time where don't forget this, during COVID, we couldn't have visitors at a time, or limited visitors. So I was laying in bed, totally, after the coma, totally immobile, not able to even go from my back to my side, getting, somewhat upset, like, what's my future hold? Why did this happen to me? What's going on? You're laying there days on end, just waiting for your painkiller to come in because I was in absolute agony. But there came a time where a peaceful feeling came over me, and I'm not saying I heard voices. I just felt the calming presence of everything will be okay. You're going to go through a tough time, but don't worry, everything will be okay. Consequently, I didn't know how many people knew about me being in there. When I got out, I found out, my mother says, do you know that who are these people calling and sending food? People I hadn't seen in 30 years found out and was sending food to my parents to help them out.
Wow.
Were praying for me, we're praying. So I had a lot of people I didn't even know. I had no idea they were praying for me. But I really think the power of prayer is definitely there. And I spoke to the doctors about it, and they said, we see a difference in patients who have, number one, family support, visitors, come talk to them. And number two, people praying for them, not just one night, but, all the time. And I can tell you from a patient's point of view, and it did calm me down. And and then like I said, I didn't know how many people were praying for me. I'm like, maybe there's a couple, but it turned out there was a lot. So, it was amazing to me. It got me through.
And John, so with the power of prayer, to me that's really interesting. Were you, I don't know a lot about, your religious beliefs or your faith, but prior to this experience, what was your opinion about prayer and faith?
Well, I had fallen away from my faith. I was like, God does, it's how can he care about everybody? There's so many people, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't that involved, and then about a month or two before this happened, I was starting to, watch YouTube videos of lectures on religion. I wanted to learn more about my faith and what the afterlife is about and such. And so I was interested in it, but I didn't really. It's not like I wasn't a practicing Catholic. I wasn't going. So, but while I was there, I had a negative experience as well. I felt a evil presence in my room, because I almost died 3 times. I had last rites. I thought I was dying, and I felt like there was this presence trying to grab my soul. And I prayed in my religion. I prayed to God to fight off the devil, kind of like in The Exorcist, where they said the power of Christ compels you, whatever. I said, in the name of God, in the name of Jesus, please, I don't want you. I don't want you here. And it dissipated. It went away, and then I felt calm again. But there's definitely, I believe, some sort of good and bad afterwards, your struggle for your soul, like they say, however you want to, wherever you want to go or not, there was a presence. So I felt the good presence and an evil presence. And the one more thing, I don't want to dwell on this, but the evil presence was so powerful.
Keep the one thing now. Because we're run out of time. By the way, I remember that. I remember that now that I do understand now why they banned me from the room. At one point, but I'm just kidding.
You're the devil.
We'll be back right at this and everything old is new again to continue with Dr. Viviani. Talk about recuperating from ICU, what it's like, a little bit of faith, and we're going to dive into UFOs right after this. So everything old is new again.
And what could ever lead you? What could ever lead you? Back here where we need you.
This is Anson Mount, and you're listening to Everything Old is New Again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
This is really about, minimizing existential risk for civilization as a whole and having an exciting future that you can look forward to, and a future where we are a spacefaring civilization and multi-planet species is far more exciting than one where we are not. We need things that make you want to get out of bed in the morning and be excited about the future. And I think being a spacefaring civilization is one of those things that everyone can get excited about.
Welcome back to Everything Old is New again. Douglas Viviani with David Cohen. And we have Dr. John Viviani back with us, our UFO enthusiast galore, the ufologist extraordinaire, aficionado of all things odd. Speaking of odd, interesting things, we just left off the last section. We were talking about you being in the ICU and having apparently a good experience, but also some odd experience, bad experience of some nature. So we wanted to just finish off that thought before we dive into some UFOs here.
Yeah, so anyway, the evil presence, and I prayed for it to go away and leave me alone. Oh, what I was saying was, it wasn't something that, as a human, you could fight. I felt like this extreme power of this evil presence. In other words, he would have total control over you, fool you. I thought it was a demon or the devil. Whoever it was supernatural power, I felt. So without prayer, I don't think I would have been able to, maybe it would have kept coming back or whatever. But I definitely had the feeling like I am utterly helpless against this force. And that's why I prayed. And it was a very strange feeling. So the point is, I really believe in the power of prayer. And by the way, I had I had a Catholic priest come in, but I also had a rabbi come in. They make the rounds. They talk to the people, and she prayed with me. It was very nice talking to her. And so it doesn't matter what religion. It's just I can't imagine someone going through life thinking that there's nothing else after this. At least open your mind to it, because I was at such peace during and after this that I was prepared. If I did die, I was prepared to go. The only thing that kept me going was I felt so sorry for my family bearing the loss, and my nieces having to go through all this. I said, I'm fighting back. I'm fighting back for them, not for me. I'm fighting back for them, and that's where I got my strength to do it.
And there we are. So
it's really just so fascinating and great to hear. Really, really inspiring to hear, John.
Yeah,
thank you. Well, it's a deep story. Of course, I edited it. I could go on for hours, but I want to bore people with details. But those are the major points.
We'd rather bore people with the discussion of the UFO.
Now I'll bore you with the UFO.
But maybe we'll do another show as you come out of it even further and have some more memories. But I think it is important, because I would go online and see what is it like to be in the coma, and what is the person's recoup like after. Let's just remember that you're not moving, so your body is losing its tone, and there's lots of machines hooked up, and there's a lot. Depends on the person, but there's lots of stuff going on. A buddy of mine suggested, and I thought it was a great idea. One time, he had his mom in ICU, and his mom loved Italian food. So one day, and I was asking advice what to do in there, because you're there for hours and you're looking at a body, and what do you do, So some of the things are, I played Bob and Ray, as I know we grew up with that, and I played a couple skits that you're familiar with that. And I remember you smiling at that time. So think of this now, 2 months in, let's call it, and you're playing this little clip.
It's like I'm dreaming, It's like I'm having a dream. Whatever input is coming into me, I'm kind of dreaming it.
But also from the outside, looking in, and you see somebody smiling. It's the first one of, if not the first reaction we got. So you get on the phone, and this is where you are on the other side of it. Oh my God, he smiled today for the first time in 2 months. He reacted because you don't know if the person's. What would you say? You're illogically thinking to yourself, is the person going through brain damage? Are they going to be around? Are they getting enough oxygen? You don't know what's happening there. Is that person that you knew still there, still going to be back? What's up? So when you see after 2 months a smile, that is believe it or not, that's a huge step. That's like going to the moon,
And just so the listeners have a frame of reference here, Doug, talk about how often did you go to see John?
Oh yeah,
you and the family.
They allowed 2 people per day, and they would keep track of who it was. And so my sister and myself and my brother-in-law split the 3 appearances. So for the 4 months, I was there probably 5 days out of 7, on a rotating basis. And we also brought some friends in, local friends here and there wanted to visit and see. And that's another thing, it's very difficult. I remember a long time ago, I had a buddy of mine that was in the ICU, and he was on the way out. We got a phone call at work, and they said, listen, he's going to be gone. So I was much younger, and I didn't know what to do, frightened of the hospital, frightened of going into a hospital room, frightened of even what to say to this person. And I didn't want to go. I got a call from a buddy of mine, Kurt, who I worked with McDonald's years ago, and he was so courageous. I don't know how he did. He said, let's go. Come on, we got to go right now. No choice. We got in the car. I met up with him. Went into that hospital. It was the best experience I ever had at that time. This gentleman passed away, but we were able to say goodbye. But we were also, he had the courage. He just walked right into the room, right into the ICU like he belonged there, this buddy of mine. And you don't have to say anything in particular. There's no magic words. You almost just need to be there and just kind of experience what you're experiencing. Just talk about it. Talk to the person. What happened during the day? Or, one example was my buddy was talking about his mom being ill and loved Italian food. He suggested, bring some Italian food in. Eat. Make fun. Laugh. If there was if there was a playoffs going on with the Mets or something, whatever team you like, talk about that. Bring reality, bring their life to them, because that's not before them right now. They can't turn the Yankee game on. So tell them what happened, maybe, whatever. Does that make sense?
Oh, to me, yeah. Just because there is, like I said, there is a part of you that hears everything. I may not remember everything, but it's definitely, I heard it, whatever input you put in. And let me just add one other thing. After I got out of the ICU and I had multiple roommates and I saw other people. And first of all the doctors who treated me, because I had many things, they all said I was a miracle. They expected me to die many times. And every time I would see them, weeks later, even to this point when I go back in for certain things, they got big smiles on their face. Oh, you're doing so great. It's great to see you. Because I am literally, when I say miracle, they mean miracle. And doctors don't use that word lightly. They said, you are a miracle. And I credit my family for giving me the will to come back, and also the power of prayer, those 2 things. Because I had other people who I saw were totally alone. It was so sad to see them laying there day after day after day with no visitors and just no will to fight back. And they're just waiting to die.
Yeah, and
they did. One of them did. I got my roommate die on me.
Yeah, I did want to mention that as well, because while you're in the coma, too, we're there all these days, and you're looking around, and there's no one there. It's very strange. And I think ICU, for some reason, this might be wrong, but my experience for those 3 months is there's a lot of older people, 60 plus, 70 plus.
And they don't make it out.
So, and I don't know what that means with the families or something, but I can tell you, and it's just a fact of my experience. I don't know what relevance it is, other than to say that I didn't see anybody else. We did not see any other visitors in the ICU for the most part. And that's sad. And the nurses were saying it's horrible. They were kind of surprised that we were there every day. They were like, and giving us praise for that and all that, which we didn't need or whatever. But the point is, from their point of view, wow, what's going on here? There are people coming to visit somebody in ICU. There are so many that were not being visited. And as we're saying, if you know someone that's in the ICU, or God forbid in the future happens, a visit is important for those people. There's no doubt. David?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think, why bother going? They don't know him here, right? Let him. We'll see him when he wakes up.
Right.
And they may not wake up.
All right.
Anyway.
So there it is. That makes sense. So we've sort of eaten this segment up with that, which is totally fine. I just want to let's turn the tide a little bit here and talk about at least introduce what we just spoke about there with or heard from Elon Musk about Mars. So now he's got a plan that we've talked about in the past that he feels that he can deliver. This is crazy to me. 1 million people to Mars by the year 2050. Did I read that wrong, Dr. Viviani?
2050. It said something here. Well, originally it said 2029.
Well, that's when he's going to start delivering them. He says by the 2050, I want to have 1 million.
And
people
he said 1 million people and or 1 million pounds of
supply. Well, here's how this is what he's got. He's got this huge starship, right? We've seen this thing, and it can lift either 100 tons of material to the moon, to Mars per trip, or 100 people at a time. So how are you going to get 1 million? I don't get that, but okay.
I don't know.
The oxygen, it's an oxygen methane fuel, so they believe they're going to be able to refuel from Mars.
From whatever ingredients are in Mars, they can refuel, for the trip back. So this is a reusable rocket.
Yes.
Right? Or, they plan on using it back forth.
Exactly. Yeah. And here's the idea. It's going to be $500,000 for the ticket price. It figures that's the average price of a house in America. And so if you want to move, it's a one-way trip. You use the ticket for your price. Now, here's a question. We'll get to it. When you get to Mars, do you work? Yes. He says you're going to be almost like an indentured servant over there. We'll see if this is even a legit. It's certainly a discussion for the next session here, and also
work off the money.
Yeah, got to work off the additional monies. So what you're being fed, so to speak, while you're on Mars. We'll be back right at this and everything else new again to dive into more on Elon Musk and his plans for Mars. These days, the news is full of teen suicide, drug and alcohol abuse. It's depressing and concerning, but there is hope. Former WWE Intercontinental Champion Mark Merrow.
Champion Choice is a live presentation that empowers students to make positive choices and live their best lives. Teach students how to live a drug-free life, prevent bullying, avoid peer pressure, and keep negative people out of their life. We are defined by our choices. There is hope.
To schedule a Champion Choices presentation for your school or organization, visit thinkpause.org.
In night vision video from a Navy destroyer, a mysterious flying triangle above the deck of the ship. The Pentagon confirming the images obtained by documentary filmmaker Jeremy Corbell were taken by Navy personnel, expected to be a part of a report on unidentified aerial phenomenon to be presented to Congress this summer.
We'll be back. We are back here on Everything Old is New again with David Cohen and Dr. John Viviani. Let's talk a little bit about first the Mars situation and then what we just heard there. With respect to Mars, David Cohen, we had a last show. We ended off with what you thought was a very interesting question. A generation from now, let's call it 100 years from now, and there are people on Mars, and they're living on Mars. Will humans look exactly the same as we look, or will they change in some way? David Cohen.
They will change in some way. Well, that was a question, right?
It sure was. Does that intrigue you? It intrigued you last time, and I'm wondering if it still has some gravitas.
I think they're going to be a lot better looking, so I'm looking forward to it. I might get up there and see if I can improve on my looks.
Here's the thought. When you're on Mars, Doctor, will your body be stronger or weaker with respect to the gravity and what's going on there?
Well,
let me clarify. I mean, the newborns, not the people.
The newborn ones will be weaker because the gravity is less gravity, so your bone density will be weaker. Like if you go over there now, you'll be like Superman coming here because you're used to our atmosphere and the struggles in it, but it's less up there. However, you have 5,000 times more radiation up there than we have here, so that's a point as well.
So what color skin are you going to have as a result of the radiation? I think there's some discussion of a mutation that might occur. Your skin.
It got to be green, right? Mars?
They actually said it'll turn orange, like carrots.
Orange?
Yes. And what about your eyes? What's going to happen, Doctor, with your eyes if there's not so much light up there?
That you'll get bigger eyes because you need to. There's not as, like you said, there's not as much light, so they have to see in the light. This is all speculation, and again, some of them are saying, no, we're talking thousands of years because evolution doesn't happen quickly. But then they said up there it could be quicker because of the different atmosphere and where we're coming from, and then they start getting into what would happen if you, in a couple of generations from now, if you had a Martian who's us born there and we have to change, can they mate with somebody from here? And if so, what would happen from that? Because
that is a discussion. You have the same DNA, but different bodies. Now, the question here is also NASA's astronaut, Scott Kelly, who was in the space station for quite some time, indicated, and it's his point of view, that when he was there, for that period of time, when he landed back on Earth, he was taller because the space between his vertebrae was elongated. And he believes, as a result of that, because of the lack of gravity, and Mars does not have a lot of gravity, that your arms and your legs, your limbs will be stronger. Doctor, yes and no? I mean longer.
Yeah, but is that but the thing is, was that a permanent change for him? Or when he got back to Earth, did it go back to where he was?
Well, it's not permanent because he went back to Earth, but if he went to Mars with his much less gravity, he probably would have been permanent. So now let's look at the picture. They also say that your head might grow bigger with the different.
It's impossible for you, Doug.
Correct.
It's just not possible.
Well, it would probably be elongated. Like, you've seen those pictures of the ancient Egyptians with the, I forget the name of the
like Akhenaten.
But with the long pointed head, and
the Sun King, Akhenaten.
And then
yes.
the picture, could be.
So here's and this is what I throw at you now. Here's the idea. At some point in time, is it possible that a Martian will look like someone with a large head, large eyes, yellow skin, long arms and long legs, arrive back on Earth, and look like a Martian, and be called an alien? What do you think?
Well, yeah, but he probably could play in the NBA.
I was going to say the same thing.
But he'd be very weak muscle skeleton, very weak bones. Yeah. Here's the question.
But I'm sure he could still dunk.
Let me ask you a question. Does that description not remind you of the pictures that we see, even in David Cohen's favorite movie, one of his favorite movies, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, of those aliens when they come off that ship? David?
Yeah, they get those long... Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, it does.
What are you going to say, Doctor?
I was going to say the same thing when you were describing the big eyes, the elongated limbs, the bigger heads. We've all seen the folklore, all the drawings of supposed aliens and what they look like. They have the long fingers, the long arms, long legs. Big eyes. That's the big thing. Is they all say they have the big eyes.
So where in our culture did the pictures of these aliens come from that we're describing that could possibly be what humans are?
Well, I see where you're going with this, Doug. I see where you're going with this. Okay.
We're laying some groundwork here. Where could it possibly come from that all of a sudden we've got in our culture at least 50 years worth of pictures of aliens that look like the picture of an alien that we're now imagining a human would be on Mars, let's say 200, 300, 400 years from now? Could it be? Is it possible that they're time travelers from Mars that have come back to Earth?
I think it's more. It's probable.
That's what I'm going for, Doctor. Do you follow my logic? That there are in 500 years from now there are.
I follow.
He's locked up. You follow what? Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you're not the first one to come up with this theory.
Oh, come on!
There's many theories on. There's already been speculation that some of these UFOs are time travelers us from the future. But again, you know what when they say UFOs, it doesn't mean that there's only one answer. According to my research, there's many different species that have been visiting this planet for thousands of years. So they're all different. And then it could be, so you could have both. It could be time travelers. It could be people from another dimension. It could be from another planet. It doesn't have to just be one. We tend to think like, oh yeah, there's a UFO in the air and it's only one, what's the matter? Only one thing. You know, it could be different ones all together, like a mishmash.
I like my theory. I really do. David Cohen, are you any thoughts about this possibility of the future coming back to haunt us today?
I guess anything is possible.
What are your
These
thoughts?
days I'll believe. I'm open to any possibilities.
Really?
Yes, I am.
Wow.
I think it's probably not true, but it can be true.
All right. Well, I at least like the idea that the mind is open and we've gotten some theory here that's possible that, I don't know, we are maybe not visited by aliens, but and maybe the aliens aren't as far away as we think. I don't know. Right.
You know what? Even though it's possible, I don't like that theory. I would rather, in my own mind and imagination, think that we're being visited from another species rather than it being us from the future. Somehow that doesn't float my boat.
That is exciting. Who wants to be visited by us in the future?
Right. You know, especially the theory is they're coming back because something happened genetically with them in the future that they're dying off, so they're trying to come back here to change
to repopulate the Earth. Yeah. Not cool.
Change whatever went wrong.
All right, so let's look at the UFO side of it then. We've got the Pentagon released these reports. Strange aircraft have been haunting the U.S. warships for years with bizarre aerodynamic abilities spotted by pilots, radar, and infrared sensors. We've seen the TikTok business. Does that make it... Well, let me be clear in the one statement here. The Pentagon has said in their UFO report there's 18 incidents that they cannot explain. Does that open the door to any possibility? And I think they're calling these unidentified aerial phenomenon. So now they're UAPs. Doctor, what's the difference between a UAP and a UFO? And more to the point, what about these Navy pilots actually seeing some of these events?
The difference is the term UFO is still looked upon with ridicule, so they're trying to make it more serious when you say UAP. I don't like that term. I like the UFO because it is what it is. It's unidentified flying object. Who knows where it's from? But pertaining to the Navy pilots, what is not coming through in these reports is these sightings are not just like, oh, there's something in the air for a minute or 30 seconds. A lot of these sightings were for days, hours on end, hovering and following these naval ships, or there are some above nuclear silos, so, for a long time. And so up until recently, now the Navy just recently said, if you're an officer or somebody who saw something, you can report it without it affecting your career. Prior, it was like, you better not say anything. If you do, they're going to blackball you from going up again. They did not want their pilots talking about what they saw.
All right, perfect segue to the next section. We will listen to a Navy pilot describe an encounter with a UFO. Right here and everything else.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
Imagine looking up at the night sky and being left with nerve damage or feeling an electrical shock. These are a couple of the UFO-induced effects in the Pentagon's report. The report does confirm the incidents were accurately reported, and medical data was collected. Some people reported paralysis, perceived time loss, and marks left on their bodies. It leads scientists scratching their heads.
David Cohen, Douglas Viviani. We are scratching our heads. However, our resident ufologist extraordinaire, a UFO enthusiast galore, our aficionado of all things odd, Dr. John Viviani, is not scratching his head. He has done the research. He has heard the reports The Navy pilots are now describing encounters with UFOs, and it's hard to walk away from a report like that, where David Cohen, that sounds like Richard Dreyfuss when he's got his arm out the door in Close Encounters and he gets burned. Remember that scene?
Yes.
That sounds like, is it art imitating life or life imitating art? I don't know. Let's take a look at what the Navy pilots have to say. Now, these are Navy pilots in their job, doing their job, being recorded. Let's see what they have to say.
So you're seeing it both with the radar and with the infrared, and that tells you that there is something out there.
Pretty hard to spoof that.
The Pentagon confirms these are images of objects it can't identify. Lieutenant Graves told us pilots training off the Atlantic coast see things like that all the time.
Every day for at least a couple of years.
Wait a minute, every day for a couple of years?
Mm-hmm.
Including this one, off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida in 2015, captured on a targeting camera by members of Graves' squadron.
Look at that thing. It's rotating. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
You can sort of hear the surprise in their voices.
You certainly can. They seem to have broke character a bit. And we're just kind of amazed at what they were seeing.
Before we go to the ufologist, David Cohen, a point of view from you, please, as to what, forget all the talk before it, which, by the way, were Navy pilots talking, being interviewed, but that actual footage of the Navy pilots being amazed at what they're looking at and seeing, and aerodynamically cannot explain it with the wind and so forth. Does that leave any impression upon you with respect to this UFO question?
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear, and it's all legit. You know, my recurring question throughout all of these UFO shows we've been doing is, you know, why hasn't there been any contact yet? And that's the thing that I think for me is, you know, maybe it's a quantum leap, but I just can't imagine, you know, aliens, people from other worlds coming to visit us without trying to make any communication at all. So that's where, to me, that has to happen, and obviously there's the proof of it, right? Before I'm really a true believer.
All right, that's fair enough. Doctor, do you have an answer in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, there are
to
two points of view on that. Number one is similar to Star Trek, the Prime Directive, that they're coming here. They don't want to they just want to observe. They do not want to interfere with the growth of our, you know, they want to change us. They just want to watch us or study us for some reason. However, there are other theories that they have come and changed our, you know, way back, changed our DNA, or there are ancient lore with the American Indians and many others that they believe they came from the stars and they got knowledge from the aliens who came down, and they did interact with us. And as well, there are, if you go look in, there are many people who claim that they have been contacted by them, and but they just, I don't know the answer as to why they don't do a mass contact, but apparently the theory is that they have contacted the government and some other people that they choose, and I don't have an answer for why they pick and choose it, or if they actually are not, you know, like I said in the first instance, that they don't want to contact us. That's the theory, one of the theories. But as our technology gets more advanced, you know, they want to make sure that we don't blow ourselves up. So they're, you know, it's kind of like the old science fiction movies that they're here to nurture us and not interfere. But if necessary, they will.
Keep talking talk to the computer because you're going in and out.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So that's. I don't know the answer to Dave's question, you know, and I don't think anybody does. It's just, you know.
An answer, I know there's postulation. How do we know they haven't been contacted? How do we know that the higher-ups in our government or the governments or the world governments, whatever, aren't keeping this a secret?
Because our government isn't good at, they can't cover something like that. You're giving them way too much credibility.
I agree with you 100%. I'm just trying to give a devil's advocate. I agree 100%. That's not the case because all our governments are for crap. We know that on many levels, right? They do good things, of course, but
however,
keeping secrets is not one of their good things.
Yeah, but there's been some deathbed testimonies by guys who worked on some of these places where supposedly they took to try and back engineer these craft, and they had to sign a non-disclosure that you can't talk about this, or else we're gonna come after you and your family. But some of them on their deathbeds, 50 years later, said, "Look, I got to tell you," to his son. I forget the guy's name, but I got to tell you what was going on. I think this goes back to the Roswell incident. One of the guys who was first on the scene at Roswell said some stuff about the government made me cover it up and wouldn't let me talk.
All right, but even if it's like, okay, let's say the American government actually, was contacted and they're covering it up, right? Let's say that's given. We're being a little like U.S.-centric here. Why would they just be communicating with the U.S. government? What about, the billions?
Well, no, it is all over the world. It is over the world, and yeah, why?
So that's a huge conspircy of international governments. No one's saying a word about this.
Well, no, not true. The USSR is much more open about UFO sightings than we are, and as well as Brazil recently came out with a policy that they're not going to be secretive. They haven't come out and done a press conference saying, look, this is what we know. We know for a fact that, XYZ exists. But they release more information on and talk about more freely the incidences. But you're right. Nobody's come out and said, well, I know for a fact because I saw them. The government hasn't said that.
All right, well, let's go this way.
I don't know if this is...
Let's pivot then a little bit. Bill Nelson was the head of NASA, and he says clearly, quoted by saying, I don't think we are alone. He's the head of NASA. He's a legit guy, right? He says, no other country's technology can move and exceed the capabilities of our planes. And however, these UFOs, the TikToks and the others, are doing things that our planes cannot do. So he's saying, in essence, he's saying there are no better planes in the world than ours. I kind of would believe that, or at least the other countries would be equal to ours. I don't think there's any better, right? So there's this evidence of our pilots going out there and seeing whatever it is move in a way that our planes cannot move. How do we explain that? It's on radar, and it's whatever. It's a legit thing that sends off alarms. So it's not like just kind of pretending that it's there and a shadow or something. So what is that? Do we know? Anybody?
Do you know? What's your take on it, Doug? You're asking.
We don't know.
I have a take on it, but you're gonna laugh at it. You're gonna scoff on it.
That's what we're expecting. That's why we're here.
I think that I've said this before, in order for a spacefaring civilization to be able to travel, how far they're going to have to travel for galaxies to come over and visit this planet. I feel that their technology has to be obviously superior to us, but superior on a exponential level. So therefore, to me, they're so far advanced, we're like ants, or we're like almost like a zoo to people that are going to Adventureland or Adventure whatever, and visiting the zoo and doing the drive-thru, right? So I think we're more or less like they're like a cruise ship. Take the cruise ship to Florida. We're going to take the cruise ship to Earth. And one of the excursions is get on this little plane, this little ship that we have, and you can visit Earth and see their warships, see their towns, see their cities, fly over them, and then we disappear and go back to whatever planet they're from. I think that's what it is. Tell me how that's crazy.
Excursions. Okay, well, let's say that's true, right? But when you're on a cruise ship, we won't get into cruise ships. But anyway, in the old days, when you were on a cruise ship and you had a little excursion, did you not try to communicate with the town or whatever you were visiting? You just observed it like it was a zoo?
Well, no, there's clear instructions on some of these too. Like, if you're visiting a certain location, don't feed the animals or don't interact, or like you go on these safaris, you got to make sure you stay in the vehicle, otherwise the animals are going to attack you.
But you're still talking to the tigers and the lions, right? I mean,
well,
you're trying to communicate in some way.
So those are the ones that we're seeing. The ones that there might be many, many, many more that we don't see, but the ones that we're seeing are the people that are breaking their own rules and sort of putting their hand out the window when they're not supposed to interact with the humans.
That's not really what I mean, but okay.
Oh, that's what you mean in some ways, no?
No, it's not. No. I mean, listen, when when you're, I'm trying to think of a quick example. Yeah. Like when you're whale watching, right?
Right.
Or you see dolphins swimming, right? You're saying something, right? Maybe not to them exactly, but you're communicating how you feel about it, right?
Right.
So,
but does the dolphin hear you?
I'm sure the dolphin does.
Interesting. And so if they do, then that's how come we've got Navy pilots reporting back that they are seeing these events that they can't explain. Mm-hmm. That's the excursion. Unfortunately, we're out of time to really explore that. Maybe we can do that next week on Everything Old is New Again. Thank you. Dr. Viviani, thank you for being back. Do you give it some credibility?
Not your theory, but...
Well, what's the fascinating one? That we're going to be back? I guess that's the theory you're talking about. Yeah. All right. We'll be back. Thank you, and congratulations on the recoup. Continued best health, and we want you to come back more and more and more.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, Jack.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back.
Is that it?
That's it.
To that same old place that you laughed about.
Is that enough?
Well, the names have all changed.